Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Now Showing podcast, where I go over films that you can stream or see in theaters that are now out. Happy Saturday morning. We have finally reached the month of April. So I thought it'd be a good time to go. I know I've missed the last couple of weeks to go over a few things that you can now watch. And I am going to be reaching back a couple of weeks for the first couple. The first one being The Boston Strangler. This new thriller is streaming on Hulu. It launched a couple of weeks ago. I have a print review that came out a couple of weeks ago if you want to check that out. But basically, the film is set in the early 1960s, where a string of murders has the residents of Boston on edge. In the midst of that, a pair of investigative reporters for the Record American shine a light on the murders and the stalled investigation. This new biopic seeks to capture their journey and catch the infamous Boston Strangler. In the film, Loretta McLaughlin, played by Keira Knightley, is a wife and a mother who's trying to balance the strains of family life with her career. She also wants to break away from the feature role where she's kind of been pigeonholed. When she comes across a murder case, she finds an opportunity. A story blossoms into something bigger, and she's soon paired with a veteran reporter named Jean Cole, played by Carrie Coon, and they spend years digging into the case of the Boston Strangler. Personally, I love a good crime drama film. I love a great journalism film. If you have followed me for a long time, you know Spotlight was one of my favorites. The Paper last year, She Said, was my number one film. I love this kind of movie. This seemed like the perfect fusion of those two genres, tackling a true crime story that's long fascinated viewers. But the script from writer director Matt Ruskin doesn't quite come together for me. The first half of the film is mostly spent tracking the case. I love the moody way it's put together, but you might be tempted to think this is going to be about the hunt for the Boston Triangle. That's only really half of the aims. The back half is focused more on some conspiracy theories that surrounded the case, the bulk of which remain just that, their theories, even more than 50 years later. We also don't get enough investment into Loretta and Jean, both of whom are trying to balance the needs of family and career. There isn't a great deal of depth of character built into the world beyond these women, so it doesn't really allow the rest of the cast to shine. Despite that, there are some engaging moments, particularly in the first half. I really enjoyed Knightley and Coon. I thought they worked well together on the screen, and I liked the moody atmosphere created here. Ruskin's script and pacing, didn't quite work for me, but he has some great shots. He did some good work as a director here. Those are kind of the things you need in a film to help hold attention, particularly in the first half. That worked well. Overall, the film had plenty of potential in a few moments, but it just didn't totally capitalize on what I was looking for. In the end, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. As I mentioned, this one launched on Hulu a couple of weeks ago. It is now available to stream. The next one is our first big animated film of the year, and that's The Magician's Elephant. This one is on Netflix, also available to stream, launched a couple of weeks ago. It's an animated tale based on the book from Kate DiCamillo that was released in 2009. The feature focuses on a young boy named Peter, voiced here by Noah Jupe, who is desperate to find his sister. Though his adoptive father, a former soldier, voiced by Mandy Patinkin, believes she's dead, Peter hasn't given up hope. He comes across a fortune teller who says he needs to follow an elephant to find his sister, but there are no elephants. When one appears the next day, the result of a magician's trick gone wrong, he sees it as a sign, and he's desperate to use the elephant to find his sister. But first, he has to complete 3 impossible tasks given by the king, voiced by Asif Manvi. This one was cute. I liked the setup. I liked the basic idea here. I thought the way they did the animation and the storytelling worked. It has some fun emotional moments. It has some beautiful sequences. Netflix has done really well with animated features in the last couple of years. They actually won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature for Pinocchio this last year. I don't know if this one quite rises to that level, but it was a fun movie nonetheless. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. As I mentioned, you can now catch it streaming on Netflix. The last 2 films are ones that opened yesterday, first of which is Rye Lane, a romantic comedy that made its debut at the Sundance Film Festival. Breakups are awful, and from the early going of this new comedy, uh, we understand that our leads are struggling with that very issue. In fact, we first meet our heroes in the bathroom. Dom, played by David Johnson, is out at an art show supporting a friend, but he's still not over his breakup. So he's having himself a little cry in a bathroom stall. It turns out to be a unisex bathroom, which leads Yaz, Vivian Opara, into the same space. She can identify, and soon she and Dom connect. After leaving the show, they spend some time getting to know each other. Eventually, Yaz helps Dom out when he has to confront his ex and the friend with whom she cheated. That only deepens their bond as they go on a series of adventures. Their attraction and chemistry is undeniable. But can these two wounded souls who are kind of struggling in the wake of breakup find a way to make it work? That's what this journey is all about. You know, romantic comedies generally follow a formula. You have a meet cute, the relationship builds, you find a moment of tension, then you get a happy ending. It doesn't always happen exactly that way, but mostly that's what you expect. You don't turn to these kind of films for the surprise of the plot, but rather for the journey you go on with the protagonist. From that standpoint, Rye Lane is a big hit. I enjoyed the script from Nathan Byron and Tom Malia. In the hands of director Rain Allen Miller, making her feature debut, we get something really magical. I enjoyed the shots, the color palette. I also enjoyed the way the humor played out. It works well because of the stars. Johnson and Opara are great in the lead roles. Their chemistry is strong. They create some beautiful and rich scenes together. We get the typical formula here, but the journey and the personalities make it a rich experience. I really enjoyed the ride. So far, this is my favorite film of the year. It is now streaming on Hulu. It dropped yesterday. I gave Rye Lane 4 out of 5 stars. I suggest checking that one out. It was a lot of fun. Last film I'm going to touch on today is the new Apple TV film Tetris. And you may be thinking, Tetris, isn't that a video game? It is. It's a simple and addictive game. You watch the pieces fall into place and line them up, clearing the rows. It's been a popular game for more than 30 years, but the story of how it came to be widely played outside of Russia, where it was created, is the subject of this new Apple TV film. It's the true story of the battle to bring the rights to Tetris to the world after it originated in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The story involves intrigue, dueling offers, bribery, and plenty of danger as business interests from the West flock to Moscow to make a deal. At the center of the story is a video game designer named Hank Rogers, who sees and plays Tetris at a video game convention in Las Vegas. From then, he's obsessed. He's there to sell his own game, but instead sees an opportunity. He snatches up what he thinks are the game rights in Japan and sets out to make a deal with Nintendo. That leads him into a larger world as he makes a trip to Russia, ends up competing against a few other interests. But while he's there, he forms a friendship with the Tetris designer Alexei, played by Nikita Efremov, and maneuvers a deal that will change his fortune and video game business forever and creates a lifelong friendship. That's kind of the fun part of the history of this film. The film takes the action back to the 80s and chronicles this wild but true story. Director John S. Baird does a beautiful job of bringing it to life. I enjoyed the period flourishes, the mixture of video game sequences to kind of tell the different pieces of the story, the way it's laid out in levels. It all does a very nice job of bringing that together, bringing a video game kind of feel into the story. Additionally, Taron Egerton is great in the lead role. He's kind of the hook that holds this whole story together. And at times it feels like a spy drama. At times it feels kind of like a buddy film, but it consistently holds your attention, pulls you into the story and the characters in the world. I played Tetris a number of times. I knew nothing about the backstory. I love the way it comes together and the way this fascinating and wild story is told. And even better when you get to the end and learn about their friendship that spanned years. If you consistently read or listen to me, you know that I love Apple TV Plus. I love the creativity of their originals, especially their original series, but they've developed some great original films. I think this is one of them. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. It debuted yesterday on Apple TV Plus. I suggest you take a chance and look that one up. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Now Showing. But Eric and I will be back tomorrow after a week off for This Week at the Movies. We're going to be giving reviews of John Wick Chapter 4, which I started on Thursday and I may still be watching. That's how long that film is, just to give you a rough idea of how I felt about it. And also the new film Dungeons and Dragons, which also launched in theaters on Friday. We'll be looking at both of those. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic day and find